Welcome to the Digging Deep podcast, where we offer bereavement bites for time-pressed professionals. I'm your host, Heather Kiteley, President and CEO of GFD. For today's episode, we have Meghan Henning, the General Manager of Lakefield Cemetery in Lakefield, Ontario. Meghan is a hands-on manager who oversees the operations of the cemetery and crematorium. Meghan started at Lakefield in 2009 when she was looking for a summer job. Her mom noticed a job posting for Lakefield Cemetery summer student position. You are the second person I have interviewed whose mom got them a summer job at a cemetery and they turned it into a career. That's just a thing, I guess. I find that fascinating. And this is the same for the other person. While Meghan wasn't too keen on working on the cemetery, she agreed. You started by doing cemetery maintenance, watering plants, cutting the grass, that kind of thing, and eventually worked your way up to being general manager. And you've worked at every single position, which I think is fascinating. Because of that, you know how to do everything, which I'm sure your staff love. And so you can relate. I like how you say, you can relate to the staff's day-to-day tasks, as opposed to telling them exactly how you want it done.
Yeah.
Meghan is a creative person, and outside of her work, she enjoys craft projects like embroidery. You also enjoy boating, fishing with your husband, spending quality time with your three nieces. And today we are going to be talking about something we have talked about ad nauseum, you and I. It was one of my favorite topics, changing attitudes towards death and how millennials will shape the bereavement sector. Okay. Welcome, Meghan.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. I know it's bright and early.
Right.
I've had 2 coffees. I think I'm okay. How about you?
I don't drink coffee.
Oh my goodness.
Another fantastic, little tidbit about me. I know I don't drink coffee.
It's amazing. I am not functional without mine. Maybe that's like a generational thing.
Yeah. You know what?
So.
It is a new thing, right?
Yeah, and the theme of millennials. Maybe millennials are less addicted to coffee than us bitter Gen Xers. I don't know. Anyway. Okay, so let's dig into this topic. According to GFD's research, 71% of millennials are interested in funeral ceremonies. Are you surprised that out of the baby boomers and the Gen Xers that millennials are keenest on funerals?
I mean, I think millennials are keen on doing anything that's not what their boomer parents are doing.
So it's not so much like, it's just I don't want to do what they did.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I look at my sister
it
is. I look at my sister like raising her kids, like she is like adamant to do it like completely opposite of what our parents did. Not that our parents did a bad job or anything. It's just like that way of parenting is completely out. So like as a millennial myself, I mean, I want to do things differently than my parents.
Yeah.
I see the way that the world works and everything now, and I'm like, I think we could probably be doing some things better. So.
Well, and I think just as a generation, and of course we're talking in generalizations, right? And so there's going to be millennials on every end of the spectrum.
Yes.
But as a generation, I think ritual is important to millennials.
Oh, 100%.
There's like gender reveal parties. There's like certainly wedding showers or bridal parties are
Yes.
not what they were back in my day.
No.
Sure, right?
The week in like Nashville and all the crazy. I mean, it's crazy now when people get married or have any kind of life event. So I mean, why not for the funeral, right?
And it's all like about experience, right? For millennials, would you say?
Yes, and that's the thing. See, I always laugh because everybody thinks that millennials are cheap, but millennials just want to pay for things and have those experiences, right? So
So it's less about the physical thing. Is that what you mean?
Exactly.
Right.
It's more about the getting together, the celebrating, the having a good time,
Creating memories
Exactly.
with your friends. FOMO is the thing.
FOMO is a real thing.
You know what's fascinating about that is I think that I'm interested to see where that concept of FOMO, being a real thing for millennials, translates to living funerals in the future.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I mean, if I could be at my own funeral, I'd like to. I want to know what people are going to say about me, right? It's like,
I hope I'm still alive for that.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be so fun.
And I mean, it's a great business opportunity, for our upcoming funeral sector. How can we
totally unregulated space?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are you seeing that play out in the cemetery?
Well, I think right now we're starting to see a lot more millennial-aged people coming in and wanting to do pre-arrangements
For themselves or for their parents?
For themselves. It was funny.
Really?
It just like a couple weeks ago, I had a family come in and they were pre-arranging for a loved one with a terminal illness, and it was a boomer, and then he was like, oh, by the way, we're going to be coming back because I've been talking to my son, who's about my age, millennial, and he's the one pushing for them to buy their own grave space, and they want, like, the son is the one that's saying, I'm ready to buy, I know where I want to be. I want to be with my parents, and I want to make sure that I have that space available.
That's amazing.
And I mean, even like when I'm selling niches now, I'm having people buy for their children, and their children are still in their mid-20s,
Right. And they're
they'll
buying for their kids.
and they want to be there together, right? And their kids
Yeah.
are supporting it as well. And they're
And is that new? Sorry to interrupt you, but is that new in the cemetery space? Because isn't that kind of like a thing in cemeteries that you buy like large swaths of plots, or is it new and surprising from your perspective?
I think it was a thing,
and then it became not a thing.
and it became not a thing,
Because
right?
nobody cared about the Gen Xers.
Exactly, the forgotten generation, right? You poor latchkey kids.
Cemeteries, they'll figure it out on their own.
Exactly, they'll go where they want. They're not gonna, they've got it, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, it was a very traditional thing.
Yeah.
You'd go and you'd buy your 8, your 10, your 16 grave lots, and you would expect generations of people to be buried there. And I mean, with our transient society now, obviously most people aren't planning for their kids or their grandkids to be in the same spot.
Right.
But I think now a lot of the times millennial children are trying to approach these topics now with their parents because they do want to be together. They do want that opportunity, and they're planning for it now.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, I sell a grave to you today, the one beside it might not be there tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's definitely not going to be there in 10 years.
Yeah.
So, if I want to be with my family, I want to make sure that's happening today.
And not talking about that to families, I think, is a disservice, right?
Oh, 100%.
Like to just sort of have families come in and say, and just sort of take direction from them and say, okay, you want that, and not tell them what the consequences of their purchases are or their lack of purchases, I think is a really important piece.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So fascinating. So do you think that millennials are approaching death differently? So that we know they're approaching life and parenting differently. Are they approaching death differently? What are you seeing there?
I think so. I mean, for myself, I've already had the discussions with my family. I guess I'm kind of biased. I work in the industry.
Well, you're maybe more educated than most,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
But I know what I want. I know what my parents want. Have they made any kind of arrangements? Absolutely not. Have I made arrangements? No. But I know, and I'm confident that if I was to pass away tomorrow, I know that my wishes would be carried out because I've already communicated with them. And I think more kids, I call them kids, but really we're not kids.
You're
millennials
not kids anymore,
are having those conversations, and I think it's because we lived and seen so much turmoil in our lives.
Yeah.
Most of our formative years happened, through 9/11, through global pandemics, through so much turmoil in the economic climate that we just want to take control of things that we can control. And I think taking control of our deaths now and how they're going to be is something that makes sense.
So how do you think they're going to shape the profession? So like what changes do you think are we going to see changes around language? Are we going to see changes about how we talk about what ceremonies look like? What do you think?
I think so. I feel like, we're definitely going to see the death, so to speak, of the traditional kind of funeral. Pun intended, absolutely, yes.
Death of the traditional funeral, yes.
Because, I mean, I know I want to celebrate when I die. I don't want a bunch of people crying, standing around looking at my dead body.
You and I are different. I just want a few tears, right? I want a few people to be like, oh, I'm so sad. But I get it. I think that having that celebratory aspect is important, right? It's an important part.
And I definitely will. I know we're going to move away from kind of the traditional like funeral home kind of setting. I mean, they're already doing it for their grandparents. We're seeing, we're having a funeral or we're having a direct, cremation or, a graveside service, but then we're going to rent out another space where we can have, fun catering and a party and alcohol and, make it more of a place where we can gather and and be more relaxed. You know, I feel like
So you feel like that millennials feel that traditional funeral setting doesn't allow that free expression of their authentic selves, which I know is very important to millennials.
That's exactly how I wouldn't put it that way because I'm not as eloquent, eloquent as you, but that's
I've had 2 cups of coffee, Megan. I can say wonderful things.
but that's exactly it. You know, I feel like millennials are always trying to be their authentic selves, and when we're put into situations where, you know, we've got to be buttoned up and have to feel like we have to present ourselves a certain way, that it just doesn't sit right with us. So
what you're talking about, I think, is one of those things that keeps me up at night, because certainly I come from the funeral side, 2nd generation funeral director, 20 years in frontline funeral service. Cemetery space is new to me. When I hear, though, millennials like you talking about this, I know through a lifetime of experience that our people, or I call them our people, funeral directors, people who work in the bereavement sector, are the most wonderful, magical people you could ever hope to meet. And what I worry about when I hear that is that there may become a disconnect between millennials actually connecting. You see, I'm getting all passionate about it. With millennials connecting with those people, because really, if you think about what you're saying, that millennials want experience. They want to be able to express their authentic self. There is no one who creates experience better than people in the funeral space. However, what you're also saying is that, hey, this isn't relating to us right now, and so there's risks that, hey, the millennials may go off and do it somewhere else, right? So how do we bring those 2 groups together? Do we need to change our language? How do they know that you're there available for them, right? Because they might say, oh, a cemetery, that's traditional funeral, I don't want to have a part of that. What do you think the solutions are? Because we don't want that to happen, because we know that millennials will have a better experience when they're connected with the funeral space.
I think a lot of it is letting go of our own personal expectations for what we think funerals or cemetery, you know, space needs to look like, needs to be. There's still a lot of really traditional kind of values inset in, you know, funeral directors' minds, in cemetery management and cemetery sales. So they want to project a certain image. They want, you know, they want to perpetuate
sort of
that
like
kind of
uber professional.
yes, and I think it comes off as inauthentic,
Right.
to millennials and even younger generations, right? It doesn't seem real.
It's not relatable?
It's not relatable at all. If you come into my office, like, I'm a very, like, dressed down person. Like, I'm super dressed up today at my office. It's a very casual atmosphere. And I always say we always need to meet people where they are, not where we want them to be.
Yeah.
So, you know, I always want people when they enter my office to be, you know, relaxed. They want to, you know, they're already uncomfortable. They're dealing with something that they don't want to be dealing with, whether it be pre-need or ad-need. Nobody wants to come into my cemetery to buy cemetery property. Nobody wants to think about their death.
Nobody wants to talk to us.
So if I can remove those barriers to that conversation, if I can take down, you know, that level of, okay, well, I'm meeting somebody in a suit and I'm just dressed, you know, I'm a farmer. You know, I'm in my work clothes. I don't feel comfortable relating to you because you don't look like me. So it's about removing those layers, removing those boundaries, removing those barriers to put people at ease and to make it more approachable.
And more about them.
And
right?
Exactly, more about them, right?
Right.
So that's the way I see it.
No, I think it's really important. One of the most interesting things that I've heard lately, well, I've heard a lot of interesting things lately, especially at the conferences that we go to, but one of my funeral director friends, when he meets with families, what they do is they ask the family, how do you want our staff to be dressed on the day of the funeral? Like, what an idea, what a concept, right? How do you want us to look?
That's
and
amazing.
so, you know, if you're a very traditional family, hey, you want us to be in a suit, no problem. If you want, you know, if you're more casual, you want us to be casual. But putting the power of the image of the funeral director into the hands of the family. And my first question for him was like, okay, how are your staff doing with that? But that's a whole other topic. And I mean, this time together has just gone so fast. So and we're out of time, almost. But I want to let you end on what is the number one change that you feel you've implemented in your cemetery that has been most impactful?
Oh, interesting. I think just embracing the environment. So embracing natural environment, embracing ways to make what we do more environmentally sound, more environmentally friendly, and more approachable, and making more gathering spaces. You know, I want people to come to the cemetery, to visit the cemetery, to stay at the cemetery, you know, and want to be there. So making more environmental changes and making more gathering space is probably the biggest.
I think that's awesome. I think cemeteries are amazing places. We were touring universities for my son, and we went past this one university in the city, and I was like, oh, thank goodness there's a cemetery. And then my husband and son are laughing at me. Oh, thank goodness, I'm going to go to this university because there's a cemetery there. But there's something about cemeteries that just bring that sense of peace and that sense of connection,
Absolutely.
right? To other generations, as opposed to being a scary place. Yeah. You are an amazing face of this profession. You really are. And I'm just so grateful that we've had this time to chat together. I can't wait to see what you accomplish in your career. So I'm going to be, of course, following you for that. So this concludes this episode of the Digging Deep podcast. Meghan, thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure. I am your host, Heather Kiteley, President and CEO of GFD. And folks that are listening, thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you.